clinic, which means the candidate is from Dinanath Mangeshkar Hospital, and he would be presenting a CNS case of a cerebral palsy with spasticity and some eye problems. And the flow will begin with the usual case history presentation. I would request the faculty to let the student complete the case if possible, the history if possible, and then intervene after positive history so that the flow is maintained. And then as per the routine case presentation, it will go on. We aim to complete the history in about 45 minutes, examination in about 35 to 40 minutes, and then 10-15 minutes for discussion with relevant investigations. That is the flow of the session. And we have with us Dr. Shailesh Patil, who is Professor of Pediatrics at GMC Belgaum. We have Anand Deshpande sir, who is guiding the student, and Utti madam is of course there. And we have other esteemed faculty also who will be guiding the student.
So can I suggest something? Rather than completing all the history and then having a discussion, it's better to have it segment wise. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because
so
otherwise we will also forget what we wanted to.
Let us ask the student to the positive history first, and then we can, I think.
Yeah. So after every segment, we can have a little bit of discussion and go forward.
Yes.
Yeah. For example, after the chief complaints, and then the points are noted at that point only.
Perfect. Yeah.
Today, as for the general pediatric perspective, we have three faculty: Dr. Shailesh Patil, Dr. Amrish Mishra, and two of them. And Dr. Sharmila Patil is a developmental pediatrician, and we have got expert neurologist Dr. Kavita with us. Go ahead.
And what about Dr. Vallari?
Dr. Vallari is a mentor, and Dr. Anand Deshpande is also a mentor. So they have guided the student. Student has prepared on his own, but to some extent they have guided them. So they will be present. They can also feel free to ask questions, intervene, or add or something like that, or make some corrections if required.
Okay, thank you.
So let's start.
And then please share your screen.
Shantan, unmute yourself. Shantan, unmute yourself.
Yes.
Shantan is third year, final year DNB student now, and is from Dinanath.
Is it showing?
No, your slides are not yet visible.
Yes.
Is it showing?
Yes, they are visible now.
They are visible.
I'm Dr. Sayansan from Dinanath Hospital. I would like to present a neurological case. The case goes as following. My patient, 1 year, 8 months old male child, second by birth order, born of non-consanguineous marriage, Hindu by religion, Marathi by community, hailing from Aurangabad and residing in Pune, informant being mother, which is reliable. Brought to the OPD with chief complaints of defective vision noted since 6 months of age, not able to walk, as noticed by the mother since 1 year of age, along with inability to chew solid foods by this age, and difficulty in changing diapers since 1 year of age.
Anthony, your voice is not very clear. Just
it's a little bit breaking. If you can use a headphone.
Little echo. There little echo. Little echo there.
So I'm using microphone
or something.
Not using laptop, but using microphone.
No, can you use earphone? Then you'll have clarity of voice.
Hello.
Yeah, it's better.
Now it's good.
So Shantanu, if you look at these chief complaints, defective vision usually cannot be a chief complaint, right? What problem it is causing will be a chief complaint. For example, is the child falling, okay, while walking or something like that? Because this is a diagnosis, right? Visual impairment. So you need to have complaints which are due to that problem. Okay. And second thing is not able to walk by 1 year of age as noticed. That is fine. Here, as you said, it's a second child. Then you can even say that as compared to the elder sibling, something like that, mother has told you. So that can be included. And the third complaint is fine. So most of the time, the CP kids are admitted for some, intercurrent infection or something like that.
And this child was not admitted actually.
Okay, fine. No, I'm just telling you for the, see, when we are discussing, it will be for a, range of CP cases, because
yes.
as an exam going student, you will not get the same case, isn't it? So
yes.
Mostly the CP cases which are given are from the ward who are admitted with some other intercurrent illness like pneumonia or something. So that complaint will also be one of the complaints. Okay. So now the child is admitted with, cough, cold, fever for 3 days, something like that. Okay. So whatever are the complaints should be the complaints and not the diagnosis. That's what I want to say. So defective vision has been, some complaint has to be there for attributing this diagnosis. Okay.
So we should segregate that not able to walk and not
yes.
able to eat solid food. Has to be segregated. They should not be clubbed together.
Agree. So try to minimize the complaints. If you find that, whatever are the major complaints, you can just include those many in the chief complaints. Okay. But of course, the acute condition which has brought the child to you will be the last complaint to be mentioned. Okay. Fine.
Can I add difficulty in changing diapers would be the question or the answer to it we get when we ask rather than the complaint by the mother.
That is also correct. So it can be in your HOPI when you are trying to localize the problem. Okay. So you can maybe say that because of the defective vision, what is happening? What is happening to the child? What is the mother telling you?
The child is not able to focus objects when brought sideways. Child is only able to fix his eyes on objects brought in the midline.
So you can say difficulty in
Visual
distant vision, something like that, rather than saying defective vision. So the complaint has to be said. Okay. And then of course not able to walk and feeding difficulties can be included. And then changing diapers and all, as rightly said, it can be in the HOPI. Okay. And at the end of your chief complaints, 2 things should be clear, whether it is a acute or a chronic, okay, or a recurrent problem, and which organ system is involved. So these 2 questions should be answered in your chief complaints with whatever case it may be. It may be a thalassemia, it may be nephrotic syndrome, whatever. Okay. So you should get an idea whether this is an acute problem, chronic progressive problem, or a recurrent problem. That is one thing. That means what is the progression of the disease. And second thing is whether it is which organ system is affected. So these 2 questions, are you able to answer on these complaints? Then these are correct chief complaints. Okay. Yeah, go ahead.
Otherwise, you can say delayed milestones also, instead of not able to walk by 1 year.
No, actually, delayed milestones is a very broad term. So, in fact, if the mother is more worried about delayed walking, then whatever is the component which is troubling the mother should be mentioned.
Okay.
That is fine. Like not able to walk as compared to his elder sibling, something like that. Because if we say delayed milestones, it becomes a very broad term, and parents usually do not use the terms milestones and all. So whatever is the mother's words, that should be in the chief complaint.
Yeah, but if we talk only about walking, we are missing sitting also. He may be delayed sitting also there, maybe.
Yeah, so that will be clear in the HOPI. That doesn't matter. Whatever is troubling the mother should be in the chief complaint.
Why don't we go for HOPI, history of present illness?
Yeah. Fine. Go ahead.
As this is the case of developmental delay, I would like to start my history from the antenatal history. As regards to the antenatal history, mother was 30 years at the time of conception. Spontaneously conceived child.
Again, your voice is breaking a bit.
Voice is not clear.
Yeah.
You remove everything. Voice is...
Are you also logged in from some other device near you, on a phone or something?
No, ma'am. No, ma'am.
Now,
So
when
just
you
use your earphone.
Yes, ma'am. I'm using your phone.
Speak a little closer to the mic. Yeah.
Louder, louder.
Sir, as this is a case of developmental delay, I would like to start my history from the antenatal history. As regards to the antenatal history, mother was 30 years old at the time of conception, and it was a spontaneously conceived child. There was a history of abortion of first child at 8 weeks of conception. The cause was not known. Regards to the first trimester, pregnancy was confirmed by urine pregnancy test. After 4 weeks of amenorrhea, dating scan was done at 8 weeks, and there was no history of fever with rash and excessive vomiting in the first trimester. Coming to the second trimester, iron, folic acid, and calcium supplements were started. 2 doses of tetanus toxoid was taken. Anomaly scan was done at 18 weeks, was normal. Quickening was felt by the mother at 5th month of gestation. And there was no history of gestational diabetes mellitus or pregnancy-induced hypertension present. As regards to the third trimester, there was no history of yellowish discoloration of eyes. There was no history of leaking or bleeding for vagina. There was no history of radiation exposure. And total weight gain was around 10 kgs in pregnancy as reported by the mother. Coming to the prenatal events, at 34 weeks of gestation, mother had acute abdominal pain. She went into labor. USG was done at that time, revealed oligohydramnios, and emergency cesarean section was planned.
So let us just pause here. Yeah. So once you talk about your antenatal history, just go back one slide. Right. So mother is 30 years old at the time of conception, spontaneously conceived. Very good. So you have to mention that. But was there any difficulty in conceiving? Like,
no, ma'am. The first child was born. Hello.
Continue.
Yes.
Yeah, there was a first abortion after 2 years of marriage, and after 2 years of this abortion, the first living child was born, and it was also spontaneously conceived.
hello.
Hello.
How old is the first child?
The child is 9 years of age currently.
So the first abortion was before that child, isn't it?
Yes, yes, sir.
So 9-year-old, and now this is 1.5-year-old. It's quite a long gap.
Yeah.
That needs to be highlighted here.
Okay.
And can you tell me what is the significance of mother's age?
Sir, advanced maternal age could present with chromosomal anomalies. There is a risk of Downs and other chromosomal anomalies in case of advanced maternal age.
So what is the background risk and how much is the risk increased as the age increases for Down syndrome? Because that's the most common chromosomal anomaly we have. What is the background risk?
Till before 30 years of age, the risk is much less. After about 30 to 34 weeks of 30 to 34 years of age, the risk is around 1 in 500.
No.
And
that's fine. So this question will be asked. So around 1 in 700 is the background risk.
These, questions.
Yeah, read this list.
Yeah. So in the history, you have not asked about any drugs being taken by the mother. That is important. I think you mentioned radiation somewhere. Just go to the next slide. Okay, so you should mention that there is no any chronic drug therapy going on. Okay, radiation you have rightly mentioned. Fine.
About radiation, when it would be significant, radiation exposure?
Yeah, he's asked in the third trimester.
Yeah, you asked.
First trimester.
Yeah, what is the reason?
But again, it could present with some congenital anomalies to the child. Sort of excess radiation exposure or any chance of malignancies.
With respect to this child, what is the importance of radiation, and would it be significant in the third trimester or the first trimester? That is what sir is asking.
No, more significant in the first trimester.
Why?
So it can disrupt the embryogenesis. Okay. Yeah. So we can move on to the next part. And what is the significance of excessive vomitings?
Ma'am, first trimester excessive vomiting could, there could be chances of anencephaly can be suspected.
Mhm.
And if the mother is on excess pyridoxine during first trimester for excessive vomiting, the child could have a risk of uh, seizures, which can be pyridoxine dependent at postnatal age, which might not be responding to other anti-epileptic drugs. If
Are you
the
talking
child
about thiamine or pyridoxine?
pyridoxine,
Because of excessive vomiting in the mother?
yes, ma'am.
I don't
If
cause
the
any pyridoxine. I'm not aware of that. Maybe other faculty can add to it.
What is the query?
Whether excessive vomiting is associated with pyridoxine deficiency. That's what
It
you
is
mean?
given. It is prescribed generally.
Okay. Okay.
There are various preparations available for morning sickness, which almost all of them having pyridoxine.
No, mother will take pyridoxine, but what is the effect on the baby if there is hyperemesis gravis?
I don't know.
That
I
is the
don't know.
question. Yeah, so I'm also not
Because it
aware
will
of
be
that.
stopped. It will stop quite early. Because by 12 weeks.
Yeah. Okay, let us go ahead then. And as somebody rightly pointed, that this is a 9 years old child right now, right? How old is the child now?
9 years old.
9 years old. So if you just can just maybe give a line that after that there were no further children, or the couple did not want, whatever. So we know that there is some kind of a bad obstetric history. Okay, that comment can be made. If it's just 1.5, 2 years old child, then we can ignore that. Fine.
So with this,
or any abortions later on also. Okay. Yeah.
So with this antenatal history, what is your conclusion? What is your inference from this antenatal history?
Yeah.
So there is a history of abortion. The cause is not known. So maybe there could be some chromosomal anomalies in the first issue, which would lead to a sequelae, which could repeat itself in subsequent pregnancies and could lead to this sequelae. Second thing is
So either you are looking at a certain genetic conditions which can repeat, or there are certain non-conducive conditions for the fetus to embryo to thrive, isn't it? Both the causes are possible. So local obstetric factors may be there. Okay.
Yeah, the mother had
and both can affect the
premature labor. So
yes.
What are the causes of oligohydramnios?
Sir, maternal causes could be due to placental insufficiency. There could be premature rupture of membrane. There could be pregnancy-induced hypertension can also lead to premature labor, and that could lead to oligohydramnios. Fetal causes can be intrauterine infections, fetal infections. Then there could be renal agenesis or any other conditions leading to decreased liquor.
Correct.
Yeah. Fine. Go ahead. Yeah.
So coming to the natal history, the child was born by cesarean section, 34 weeks of gestation, at a private hospital in Aurangabad. The birth weight was around 2 kgs. The baby did not cry immediately after birth. Some resuscitative measures were taken. The exact details were not known. According to the mother, the baby cried after 10 minutes and was shifted to NICU, kept on supplemental oxygen. However, the baby didn't require any ventilator support. And as condition improved symptomatically, the baby was shifted to mother's side on second day of life.
Go further. Go further. At the end of history, we'll ask.
The baby was started on formula feeds.
Somebody has pointed out where there was a consanguinity on the
non-consanguinity.
He has mentioned that. Non-consanguinity.
Okay.
So finish the perinatal, then we'll come back to it. Yeah.
The baby was started on formula feeds by nasogastric tube on day of life 1. However, according to the mother's words, the baby was shifted to exclusive breastfeed from day of life 2 And according to mother, the baby was able to suck properly and was discharged from the hospital on day of like 5. And there was no history of hypoglycemia, seizures, or hyperbilirubinemia during hospital stay. And mother also said that the baby had adequate weight gain and didn't require any hospitalization thereafter in the infancy.
So do you think that this not cried immediately after birth is some significant in this child, or is not significant?
The exact details are not known, but as the child is neurologically looking.
So the later perinatal period is also giving you a clue, na? So that's what sir is asking. What is the inference drawn from the whole perinatal period, not just the birth event?
So
this can be a perinatal insult, but the child was otherwise neurologically normal as a significant perinatal.
So how will you ascertain what symptoms would be there for a mild neurological abnormality, moderate neurological abnormality, and severe neurological abnormality? Because you'll have to ask those questions.
We can add APGAR score and outcome with it.
If it is available, you can add the APGAR score. But here, in this context of this history that you have given, that he was started on formula feeds by nasogastric tube, right? Day 2, he was shifted to exclusive breastfeed, and he was able to suck properly. What does it tell you? Was it the baby did not cry after birth? So you're thinking of asphyxia, isn't it?
Yes, ma'am.
So is it likely to be a mild, moderate, severe? Usually nowadays we don't use these.
It is likely to be mild. If we think in terms of HI, maybe it was a mild HI, hypoxic ischemic.
So how will you ascertain that HIE means hypoxic ischemic encephalopathy, right? So the encephalopathy will remain for a few days to weeks to months. So what is the additional history you need to take to know whether there was any encephalopathy? So one is feeding, very good. What else?
Regarding the sucking and other, regarding whether there was any
feeding. So a baby who is feeding well is probably not having a severe brain insult. Yes. What else?
Whether the baby was active, alert, irritable, regarding the higher functions of the baby. And what was
who is unusually sleepy, has to be woken up for feeds, who is not waking up by himself or herself every 2-3 hours for feeding, or in contrast, a baby who is always irritable, and has got inconsolable crying for many hours in a day, right? So both of these extremes can be there, either excessive irritability or excessive sleepiness.
What is the staging that describes this?
Yeah.
Which staging is used for?
So though we use it only in the immediate perinatal, but you can use the same thing for little extended perinatal period also.
Levine staging is used for categorizing HI, and it has mild, moderate, and severe stages.
No, behavior-wise.
Behavior-wise, clinical staging.
The Brazelton scale is used for assessing.
Brazelton is not for HI. It is a normal. What is it Brazelton scale?
So one is for neonatal assessment, and other is for seeing the level of awakeness or consciousness of the child.
So consciousness is different. Here we are talking about subtle signs of encephalopathy, right? The baby is conscious.
So staging of HIV was done by whom? Who has the paper of that? When was the paper published?
That table of HI grading. Whose grading is that?
Have you heard of Sarnat and Sarnat scoring?
Yes, sir.
So we are asking about the same.
Yes.
Okay, so even in the extended perinatal period, you can have these symptoms, because signs and all you will see on examination. But how will you deduce from the history whether there was any kind of encephalopathy going on for a few weeks or few months after the immediate perinatal period? So that will give you an idea what was the severity of the insult. Okay, so excessive irritability as well as excessive sleepiness, both are abnormal. So that history has to be taken. But usually if there is a good weight gain, good sucking and all, mostly we are not expecting the baby to be encephalopathic. Fine.
So he was discharged on day of life 5. So
Yes.
he's unlikely to be severely encephalopathic, isn't it?
Baby handed over to mother on the within 24 hours. So
Yes.
that goes against any major.
Severe encephalopathy.
No, that's what I'm saying. For subtle encephalopathy, babies are almost handed over. Once they start sucking, they are handed over. But at home, they keep on crying, or they're having excessive sleepiness and all, which is all ignored because it all subsides with time. So the longer this period remains, okay, and more prolonged, more severe are the symptoms, they all indicate that there is a severe brain injury which has happened. That's what I want to say. Yeah.
Let's find out from him whether he has some problem initially in first month or 1 or 2 months. Let's find out from him. Let him proceed.
Yeah. Go ahead.
That's what happened in.
However, at 6 months of age, mother noticed some inward deviation of the right eye, and after a month, the same was noticed in the left eye, which concerned the mother. So she took her to a hospital in Jalna. The child got evaluated by an ophthalmologist, was prescribed application of an occluder to one eye, and was asked to follow up. However, the symptoms of the child persisted, and on the second follow-up, the child was advised spectacles for refractive correction. However, the problems didn't get correct, and this problem has been persisting till now. On further inquiry, mother also reported that the child was not able to walk by 1 year of age as compared to the elder sibling, and this time the mother felt some delay in the development of the child as compared to the elder sibling, and for which she consulted the physician. And I would like to give the detailed developmental history later in my.
Just a minute. Madam has to ask you something. For first 6 months, was child very irritable, feeding well, had a problem? You didn't mention anything about that. They are the early indicators of cerebral palsy. These are what madam told us are the early indicators that this child may develop a neurological problem later on. And you have not mentioned anything.
Actually, mother didn't give any history of excessive cry, inconsolable cry, or not feeding well.
So maybe you said that my child was feeding well.
You need to just mention that. Okay.
You should mention briefly in 2-3 lines. That child was feeding well, mother and child were enjoying each other's company. He was not irritable, and he was sleeping well at night and gaining weight. If you say 5 sentences, that tells us that he was neurologically normal before that. Okay.
And regarding the visual complaints, because you are going to, I think, talk about the walking and all in detail in the developmental history. So vision, what do you think might have happened here? Because you have mentioned that there was an inward deviation which was noted, okay, and after a month was seen in the right eye, left eye also. An occluder was prescribed, but it did not get corrected with the whatever correction was advised. So what do you think may be the problem? Or we can come back to it later once you finish the developmental history.
What I feel that he should continue developmental history in ODI in these cases here only. It should not be that's a better way.
Yeah. So we can finish the developmental history and come point wise. Okay. Fine.
Because it abrupt breaking is there. You tell us some history, you break, you come back. So you should cover everything together here.
Okay. Yeah. So we'll proceed to the negative history or developmental.
Go further. Continue.
Yes. Along with his mother said that though complementary foods were started for the child at 6 months of age, however, the child was reluctant to take solid food even by 1 year of age, while he was readily accepting liquid foods. And mother noticed difficulty in changing diapers of the child by 1 year of age, and his lower limbs felt more stiff to the mother compared to the upper limbs.
So Sayantan, what you have actually done is you have just gone into details of each complaint, right? But in the CP child, you have to weave these complaints into the HOPI itself. So the developmental history is your HOPI. Okay. So as Sir said just now, that you have to start with the developmental history once you finish the perinatal history from there itself. And you weave these chief complaints into that only. Okay, right now what we are doing is what we do for a typical case of pneumonia. We go into details of cough and then we go details of fever and so on. So similarly, what we are doing is here you are going into the vision complaints and then going into the feeding issues and so on. So this should all be woven into the developmental history itself. So you can
It should
maybe
be
just go directly to the developmental history.
It should be like a flow, you know. It should
Yeah.
be like a story.
Yeah.
It should be a breaks.
So the all the chief complaints what you have mentioned should be covered in the developmental history, because that is the main area which is affected in this child, isn't it? So nothing should be left uncovered, but don't make it like complaint based HOPI. HOPI is your developmental history itself. Go ahead.
Are you going to tell the details about the complementary feeding or problems later on in the dietary history? Or
Yes.
is that all?
No, I will tell in the dietary history.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's what we are saying. We don't need all this history here. Okay, it can be all made a part and parcel of developmental history. Fine, go ahead.
Coming to the negative history,
Continue.
there was
No, you go directly to the developmental history
Developmental.
first. Yeah. Yeah.
in the gross motor milestones, neck holding was achieved at 7 months of age. Rollover was seen at 8 months of age. The child could sit with support at 16 months of age, and the child was able to stand with support at 18 months of age. Regarding the fine motor milestones,
Let's-
by the
Now he is 9 years, you said, na?
No, 1 year.
See,
one,
do you,
no, 1 year,
18 months.
1 year,
Ah.
8 months.
Okay, fine.
do you want to ask, do you want us to believe that he was absolutely normal till 7 months and suddenly take the neck holding?
No, sir, but the mother
Start-
didn't.
See, so when mother was trying to lift the baby, neck used to fall back or she used to fall in front. All these things should have come before he was not neck holding, you know. See, there's a preparation. The development is never abrupt. There's always the body always prepares for next milestone. And preparation for next neck holding is going to be that child is going intermittently holds the neck, suddenly falls, then he takes neck above the level, and then he holds the neck. See, your neck holding can have a spectrum. It's not one that. See, a neck holding at 5 months is different than neck holding at 4 months. It's different than neck holding at 3 months. You know that.
Yes.
Neck holding at 4 months is it goes with the body.
Plain.
Neck holding at it precedes the body. Neck is always head is in front of body. That's at 5 months. So you'll have to tell us what type of neck holding is achieved at 7 months, and for that you will have to start much earlier than that. Okay.
And in a CP child, it's better to, just like you mentioned in your HOPN, it should be in a flow, in paragraphs, rather than, neck holding at this month, this at this month. So it looks like a flow. Okay. Fine. Go ahead.
Coming to the fine motor milestones, bidextrous
But
approach.
just a second. Now the child is 1 year, 8 months, right?
Yes, ma'am.
So he is just able to stand with support as of now?
Yes, ma'am. He can stand with support, and he tries to walk.
Okay.
Transitions
So
are there.
So even that should be mentioned, that he's walking with support. And then how is he walking? Is he walking with both hands held, one hand held?
Yeah.
Okay.
M-
Because
Ma'am, I
if he's just
mentioned.
standing with support, then I'm not expecting that he'll walk with support with just one
when-
hand held or something like that. Yeah.
Regarding the fine motor milestones, bidextrous approach was noticed at 8 months of age, and unidextrous approach and mounting of objects was noted at 1 year of age. The child could transfer objects from one end to the another from 14 months of age, and could see for a toy which was dropped from 16 months of age. Regarding the language milestone, cooing was observed by the mother at 6 months of age. The child could speak monosyllables at 10 months of age. Bisyllables were spoken by the child at 12 months of age, that is at 1 year of age. And the child could speak 1 to 2 words at 15 months of age. Social smile was achieved at 5 months, and the child could enjoy mirror image at 10 months of age. However, stranger anxiety was noticed at 1 year of age, and the child responded to name by 14 months of age. At
Yo.
present,
Before at present, you've forgotten something very important here. See, you didn't tell us about anything about eye contact. See, was there eye contact at the initial period? He was following his mother from side to side. Then what happened? Then he developed a squint. Because your squint and eye problem is a major complaint here. So you didn't tell us anything about development of eye milestones. Let me put you as a visual milestones. You didn't tell us anything about it.
Visual tracking.
Even the vision and hearing is part of the developmental history. No? You have not mentioned anything about it. Yeah.
By 6 months of age, the child could visually track the mother. However, the tracking was not observed in pure 180 degrees. It was only achieved.
When does the child follow the mother till 180 degrees? At what age?
By 3 to 4 months of age.
And much before that.
So, and was he recognizing mother by
Yes.
face? So all
Yes,
those will be important here, na? Because visual milestones are also important here. Apart, I mean, the half of the social is by the visual route only, isn't it?
And your chief complaint is visual.
Yeah.
Two things here. One is it is always better to tell like social smile achieved at 5th month of age, which should have been achieved by what age? What was in the correct age? That is
by 1.5 to 2 months of age.
Yeah. So it is whenever you say it is delayed, no, what would be the age when it should be achieved? And at the end of each, say gross motor, you should be telling what is the gross motor age.
Normal range.
Present.
Yeah. At least tell the how delayed is he. So either you can use the word quotient, or you can just say that his current gross motor age is this much. Okay, this many months, like that.
We have mentioned it in further slides. Let's go further.
Okay.
Go further.
So I think what examiner probably want is at the end of each head, the DQ should be mentioned rather than together. Is it so?
Yeah, because you may have discrepant development, okay, deviant development. So it's better to summarize at the end of each
domain.
What is the approximate developmental age or developmental quotient also you can mention. Usually DQ is mentioned in terms of assessment. So here you can at least say that the current developmental motor development gross motor age is 6 months or 7 months, whatever, against the chronological age of 1.5 years. Okay.
Yes.
So have you finished with the developmental history or anything
No,
else?
At present, the child tries to walk with support, holding one hand of the mother. Child throws objects given to him, and mouthing is not present. The child can speak 3 to 4 words, and the child is able to look towards sound. And the child is not able to tell whether he wants to go to toilet or whether he wants to micturate.
One thing I didn't understand.
We'll expect.
Does child get up on his own?
Yeah.
No. The child is not able to tell whether he wants to micturate or pass urine.
What age they tell?
One thing I didn't.
What madam was? Yeah, please continue.
One thing I didn't understand is, does child get up on his own and then he needs assistance for walking, or he has to be made to stand and then for walking? That I didn't understand from your history.
So what madam was asking about transitions, you have to mention that, okay?
The child is able to stand, but for walking he needs assistance.
No, but when you are making him stand, is he standing or is he able to stand by himself without any support?
Yes, he's able to stand.
For example, if he's going towards the sofa and then standing, okay, then that's a different thing. And what about crawling, creeping? You have not mentioned anything. When did he achieve that? Did he achieve that, or did he not have any transitions? That is also important.
Crawling was not reported by the mother. However, the child can cruise. Hello?
Continue.
We should ask, I think, in detail developmental history if mother is not telling. Because they are major points like transition and crawling and all those in cerebral palsy child.
I agree with madam. See, you should always ask milestone which are there at 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, 1 year. Maybe that will help you to come out better.
Yes.
If you target that 3 months what are achieved has been achieved, at 6 months what are achieved, maybe then you will not miss this crawling and all those things. You will not. Maybe because what madam says is I agree with her.
As regards to the developmental quotient, in the gross motor domain it is 63, in the fine motor domain 60, In the language domain, the DQ is 75, and in the social domain, DQ is 60, and average DQ is around 60.
So again, don't have such figures, 53, 60. Have a rough figure, 50, 60, like that. You cannot have 62, 53. You're not doing a assessment, right? So on the evaluations, you may get such figures, but on your routine assessment, you will just say against a developmental age of against a chronological age of 12 months, he is at 6 months. So that becomes 50%. Okay, something like that.
Approximately.
Yeah. So you cannot say 52 and 53. You cannot calculate that accurately. So what is your comment on the developmental history? What do you gather from here?
The child is having global developmental delay, where more than 2 domains are affected, and there is more affection of the gross motor and fine motor milestone compared to the language and social milestone.
So language is around 75, you said, and the gross motor, fine motor, social, probably because of the visual. So here your visual, hearing, okay, should come. And in the developmental history itself, you should at least mention something about the handedness. Are you finding any, hand preference? Is there any, difference in between both the sides? Is there any difference between now all that HOPI that you mentioned should be woven here actually. Okay, that the mother finds it difficult to separate the legs while this thing. You can either have a separate section of activities of daily living and include all this in that. So feeding history has to be in detail here. What are the feeding difficulties? What are the difficulties in activities of daily living? Is there any asymmetry, noted by the mother? Is there any difference in the, as compared to upper limb, lower limb, she's having more difficulties in maintaining the perineal hygiene or something like that? So all that history which is going to point towards a diagnosis should be here. That's what
even the diaper changing, what he had mentioned.
So all those things, feeding difficulty, what exactly is the feeding difficulty? So here you can mention that. Okay, rather than having it as a part of the HOPI, though they were your chief complaints, but they have to be woven into the developmental history. Have you got the idea, Sayantan?
Yes, ma'am.
And
right.
language, language, he just mentioned it should be receptive as well as expressive, right? As a developmental point of view.
Yes.
So that should be separately mentioned with the asking the correct questions, whether he responds and how he responds.
And a little bit more detail, when he's standing, is he standing on his tiptoes? Okay. Is he having any other continuously fisting his hands? All that in the early development, gross motor, fine motor, you can mention, which will, or is he, preferring to keep his neck in a certain position? So all that will give you a clue that where may be the abnormality. So all these, once you are examining, what is the abnormality. So all that should actually reflect in your history. Okay. So when you see an abnormality, you ask, ये कब से ऐसा कर रहा है? ये गर्दन ऐसे ही रखता है क्या? Okay. And then you include it in your developmental history. So the more comprehensive your developmental history is, it will fetch you more marks.
End of history, you should.
Yeah. Okay.
Ma'am, so for benefit of our PG listeners, I just wanted to summarize that.
One second, he has not lost any milestone. That's a second.
Regression history,
Yeah, that will come too. But I mean, at least in the developmental history, everything has to be mentioned. So in the developmental history, you are trying to.
Vallari, you can consolidate. Vallari wanted to consolidate for the benefits of listeners.
Can I just finish with the points on the developmental history?
Sure, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. So please. Yes.
In the fine motor, also you have not mentioned whether his grasp is still, crude grasp, or can he do a pincer grasp? Right?
He's not able to do mature pincer grasp is not achieved till now.
So you have not mentioned that. Then in the language also, whether he is having with meaning, without meaning.
Without meaning.
So you have not mentioned. That's what I'm saying. Okay. So if he's just as Sharmila said, expressive as well as so how much is his understanding of the language, and expressive part comes later. So first receptive and then your expressive. Then in the social, have you mentioned whether he waves bye-bye or not?
No, ma'am, he's not able to.
So that's an important milestone, right? And of course, visual, you have totally missed in the developmental history. What is he doing visual wise? And feeding, and activities of daily living. So all that should be there in the developmental history. Valerie, please go ahead.
Ma'am, so visual wise, what else did you want him to mention? Can you elaborate
Right.
a
So
little on
as
that?
somebody already pointed out, so first, what is the first visual milestone? It is your, just focusing intently, right, on the face. That will be the first visual milestone. So when did that start? Now, this is just a 1.5 years old child, so mother can remember. In an older child, mother will not remember those intricate details. So when did the
True.
focusing start? So you know that what is the onset of the visual problems? Is it there since beginning, or has it happened over a period of time? That's why you need to know what may be the causes of visual problems in a child with CP. So it can be a problem with the refractive errors. It can be cataract. It can be, squint. It can be cortical visual
Nystagmus.
impairment. So there can be multiple causes. So in the developmental history, when you take the vision history, you are trying to localize where is the problem. Okay. So that is what we need to find out. And feeding history is very important. Is he having drooling? You have not mentioned anything. You have just mentioned that he has got feeding difficulties. So what is the current feeding status? Does he have to be on only mash foods? Is he having any drooling? Does he have drooling? How long does it take to feed him? So the more elaborate history you give, less are the chances for the examiner to catch you that you have not told this, you have not told that, like that. So the HOP is not separate in a child with CP. It's all integrated into the developmental history. That is the most important point I want to make. Okay. Fine. And activities of daily living, again, apart from feeding. So here you will be able to make out that the mother finds it very difficult to separate the legs while doing the perineal hygiene. Okay. It is very difficult to dress and undress the child. So all these are telling you that there may be some either excessive tightness or excessive looseness of the body. These questions you can ask the mother that you have nowhere mentioned. Or is there unusual tightness in the lower limbs as compared to the upper limbs? Okay. So you have mentioned that there is a difficulty in changing the diaper, but try to find more evidence for that, like whether he's walking on tiptoes, whether he's, in a hemiplegic CP, you may get more history of not using one hand or keeping one hand fisted always. So try to, include more historical clues to go to a diagnosis. That's what I want to say. Okay.
So, ma'am, in such a case, what is expected probably is the history of present illness probably will start with antenatal history, natal history, and the postnatal behavior of the child, and then going into the detailed developmental history as you elaborated, and probably at the end of developmental history about bowel bladder habits and activities of daily living, including feeding, and then the feeding drifting into the detailed feeding history like the complementary feeding, and at the end we can mention calories, so that it is a comprehensive probably and not missing out on the major history heads probably.
Yes.
Can it be fashioned in that way?
Because the neurological history is woven in the developmental history again. So here you are also trying to localize where is the problem, okay, in the developmental history itself. So in an older child, you may have a proximal muscle weakness, you may have a distal. So you have to ask questions for everything. Is he able to lift his shoulder? Okay, is he able to grasp the things? Is he able to get up from sitting position? Is he having any problem with walking? Do you feel there is any difficulty? So all the questions should be to localize the lesion. Where is the lesion? Is it a bilateral lesion or a unilateral lesion? Where exactly? Is a complete neuraxis involved? Is it UMN? Is it LMN? All these questions should be answered in your this detailed history only. That's what I want to say. So unless you ask all these questions, you will not get a clue at the end of your history. So at the end of your history, you are going to summarize that, okay, I think there is a chronic non-progressive.
Kavita, your voice is not heard.
Ma'am, your voice is not audible.
Your voice is not heard, Kavita. Her net connection is gone.
I hope the point is clear.
Your voice was not heard in between.
Oh, sorry. So what I was saying was that in the development,
I think let us
let us go ahead. Let us
to examination, because it's now 3:20 and we are still on the history.
Yeah, but the history is the most important part.
Because we have to finish off management and give some to the message to the listeners.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Regarding the negative history, there was no history of abnormal chest movements or fast breathing. There was no history of abdominal distension. There was no history of lethargy, incessant crying, neck stiffness.
Voice not clear. Fenton, speak loudly.
There was no history of abnormal chest movements, fast breathing. There was no history of abdominal distension. There was no history of lethargy, incessant cry, and neck stiffness. There was no history of facial asymmetry, drooping of eyelids, inability to close eyelids. There was no history of drooling of saliva. There was no history of nasal regurgitation during feeding. There was no history of pooling of secretion. And there was no history of abnormal jerky movements or altered sensorium. There was no history of vomiting, constipation, or sleep disturbances. And there was no history of difficulty in hearing or looking towards sound.
So why have you asked all this history, negative history?
First, we want to rule out any other organ is involved or not, apart from neurology.
So basically, yeah. So they would have been there in the chief complaints itself, right? So if there is any fast breathing and all, it would become a chief complaint. It's such an important thing. So what you are should be focusing on the negative history is first is you already know this is a child with CP, isn't it?
Yes.
In the beginning. So first thing is where are you localizing it? Okay. That is one important thing which you have to do in the negative history. So are you localizing it in the bilateral cerebral parenchyma? Are you localizing it in the basal ganglia, cerebellum? Okay, that way. Or are you localizing it in the lower motor neuron? So upper motor neuron, lower motor neuron, both can cause delayed development, isn't it? So you have to localize whether it is UMN or LMN. So what would be the things to rule out LMN here? And what will be the things to support UMN that you have already covered in the HOPI? Secondly, you have to talk about the comorbidities because you know that CP is associated with so many. So all that has to be in the negative history. So negative history has to be very targeted. Chest movements and fast breathing. I will not, expect that to be as a negative history in this child. Thirdly, would be the etiology. So in the etiology, you will like to, even though there is a history of perinatal asphyxia, you will like to rule out any other causes which can, mimic a cerebral palsy. So these three things would be actually the intention of taking a negative history here. I think other faculty can comment if they have any other views.
Yeah, seizures history also. He has mentioned abnormal jerky movements and a seizure history, or that can come in negative history.
Yes, yes.
Even lethargy, incessant, and neck stiffness. What is the point behind asking it?
Sir, to rule out meningitis and to get an idea about the higher functions of the child.
So that is what I'm saying. Are you thinking of meningitis here?
It's a cold case right now when you have taken.
That's so what, if you unnecessary ask questions, you'll get deviated.
So you are looking at anatomy.
Goals in your mind.
Yeah. Looking at anatomy, etiology, and complications primarily.
Yeah. Okay. So you are trying to anatomically localize, look at the complications of the condition, look at the etiology. So these are the, and fourth is the comorbidities. So these things should be covered in the your negative history.
Yes.
Okay, so are there any abnormal movements happening? So that will rule out a basal ganglia. Okay. Are there any seizures? Are there seizures? You have already told, I think, right?
No, he hasn't mentioned.
Okay. So all these things would be important here. Is there any hearing impairment? Is there any kind of parental concern? Of course, you will check it in the examination because you're still at the history. And comorbidities wise, most important would be constipation. Okay. So you can ask for constipation directly. It is a symptom, isn't it? You need not ask for abdominal distension, urinary retention or urinary dribbling, whatever. So those symptoms should be there rather than this thing. And of course, other etiologies, because as somebody said, is it a progressive disorder? Is it a CP mimic? So you need to ask for certain questions. So what would be those questions? So are there any associated recurrent vomiting, fluctuations? Okay, that will point to a metabolic disorder. They can also come like this. Right, Sayanta?
Yes, ma'am.
So basically,
so your negative history is very important in CP, okay? Yeah. Sorry?
See, what we tell you is negative history in any cases, negative history of etiology, negative history of complication, negative history of differential diagnosis, and system-specific negative history. These are 4 points which have to be covered in all negative histories. And system specific is you have to localize in CNS. And then you should have neurocutaneous markers also in CNS. These are four things which are to come in your negative history: etiology, differential diagnosis, complication, and system specific negative history. Any case presentation, these four things have to come. Okay.
Yeah, just comment for every case. Yeah. Fine. Go ahead. So we are not trying to criticize you, Sayantan. It is just for learning. Okay. So what? How a CP case is very different, because we are usually into the groove of presenting other cases where we have very different kind of history taking and examination. But CP is a little different because everything is interwoven together. Okay. Yeah.
Yes.
Go ahead.
As regards to the past history, there was history of one episode of generalized tonic-clonic convulsion at 14 months of age, which was lasting for 4 minutes. It was preceded by fever, required hospitalization for 3 days. The seizure episode got aborted at home itself. However, the child was drowsy for an hour. It was admitted in the hospital. There was no repeat seizure episode. There was one history of one episode of GTCS at 14 months of age, lasting for 4 minutes. It was preceded by fever, and it required hospitalization for 3 days. The seizure episode got aborted at home itself. However, the child was drowsy for an hour and was admitted at the hospital. No repeat seizure episode was noted during the course of hospitalization, and on discharge, the child was not prescribed any anti-epileptic medication. And currently, the child is on physiotherapy and occupational therapy since 1 month. In the family history, the elder sibling is of 9 years of age with good academic performance, no developmental delay. There is no family history of chromosomal anomalies, developmental delays, or seizures. The nutritional history, exclusive breastfeeding was done till 6 months of age. Complementary foods were started thereafter. However, the child prefers liquids to solid intake, and the child can gulp mashed solids. The calorie intake is appropriate as per age. Protein intake is near about appropriate as per the requirement.
So, do you think that the child has not been given?
Yes, sir. Excuse me.
Do you think the child has not been given opportunity to learn to eat solid, or he is not able to chew at all? That's one thing. Because why he, you will have to tell us. Either he has got a choking during solid, or he is not able to chew the solid, or his mother not giving him adequate opportunity because mother might be afraid that she's not baby may choke after that. So you will have to tell us what the real problem is.
When when complementary foods were started at 6 months of age, mother tried giving solid foods, but the child couldn't swallow it, and then
there was incontinence.
So there was choking or the what? That's what sir is asking.
There was difficulty in swallowing.
Yeah, but it will manifest either as choking, okay, or prolonged eating. The child will take hours to just gulp down one morsel. So all those things you can elaborate, because feeding history is important, because that was one of your chief complaints, isn't it?
There is no history of choking, but
and how much time does it take for the mother to feed? Because you said that calorie intake is almost 900 kilocalories, so he's taking a good amount of food. So what
the child would
semi-solid
would readily take liquids, but while giving semi-solids, the child is to take much time compared to as the mother noticed while feeding the elder sibling at that age.
So taking prolonged time for feeding, choking, drooling, all these are the associated factors which will tell you that there are feeding difficulties. Okay. So here in your nutritional history, you should be able to highlight that, not just tell ki itna calorie, itna ye. You have to say that the child takes long to feed. If he is given solids, he chokes on them. So the mother is giving only semi-solid foods. And even that, the mother has to keep feeding for almost 1 hour per feed. Something like that has to be there. Okay, and the child has persistent drooling even between the feeds. So all this is telling you that there is a severe, what is the cause of feeding difficulties in CP children?
This could be due to pseudobulbar palsy.
Yeah.
Or could be due to spastic tongue, if the child is not able to take the
there
food.
There can be a lot of palatopharyngeal incoordination. Okay, so there can be many reasons for that. Yeah, oromotor dyskinesias may be there. Yeah. So all these can contribute to a feeding difficulty. So highlighting feeding difficulty is very important because this is also one of your chief complaints. So in your nutritional history, it is not getting highlighted. So highlight all the points which are important. That's what we want to say. And also, when most of the CP kids, because they are mostly on semi-solids or liquid diets, they are not nutritionally balanced, and they may have lots of vitamin deficiencies. They may have lots of iron or B12 deficiency. So you can even find out what is the iron intake. Is he on adequate iron? Is he getting adequate iron and B12 in the diet, which we ask for any kid. Okay.
Okay.
He may be just predominantly on a milk diet, which will cause severe iron deficiency. So whatever, you can say that he is on an iron deficient, predominantly milk-based diet, which is being given through the as a just as liquids. Okay.
And milk-based diet is also going to cause constipation also.
But
Yeah.
the child was not on exclusively milk-based diet. The mother told that the child consumes maximum 1 or 2 glasses of milk per day, but otherwise he is taking paste of rice and
so different cereals and vegetables and whatever. So you can just mention in one line whether the diet is nutritionally balanced or not. Okay. As for any other kid, the CP kid, it's even more important. Okay, because they are not able to swallow properly. Fine. Go ahead.
The child is immunized for age as per IP schedule. BCG star was present. Socioeconomic history. The child belongs to upper class.
Just wait for a minute. See, if you are talking about immunization history, as a pediatrician, you will have to give us some more detail. That
last
vaccine,
immunization.
What vaccine approximately he has taken? What was the last vaccine given? Which was the place where it was given? Was it given in government hospital or was it given in a private hospital? So that we know what vaccine has been taken and what new other vaccines is taking now, which has been recommended now. Has he been taking those vaccines now? All these things should come, not only just one sentence that is immunized as per IIP schedule.
So the child is taking vaccines at private clinic by the pediatrician. The last vaccine was taken at 16 months of age. It was DPT booster was taken by the child, and the second dose of hepatitis.
At 15 months.
Can't hear you.
Continue.
Second dose of hepatitis vaccine.
Fine. So the point has been made. You can just refine your vaccination history. Let's go ahead. Yeah.
Hello.
Yeah, go ahead, please. Yeah.
They belong to upper class according to the modified Tokusami scale. So coming to the summary, this was 18 months bed child with global developmental delay, with the motor milestones being more affected, with a history of preterm birth and suspected perinatal asphyxia, with vision abnormalities and feeding difficulties, with stiffness in the lower limbs, without a history of family history of neurological disorder. So this is most likely a case of global developmental delay with spasticity, likely due to a perinatal injury.
See, basically one more thing is, you said that motor milestones are more affected than other milestones. In motor milestone also, we are interested whether upper limb is more affected or lower limb is more affected, because we want to localize the disease. Where
They've already given that information in the history, no? Yeah.
No, but
lower limb is more
differentially. Yeah. So in the summary also, you need to mention that. With predominant affection of
so that we can
upper limb or lower limb.
And peripheral or central. These are things we should cover.
So mentioning about spasticity at the end of history is, how is it correct to mention spasticity? And second thing about vision abnormality, which is same as what is the chief complaint. I think his assessment on the history, what is the issue with the vision, needs to be told here.
Yeah.
We agree that stiffness or maybe very difficult to assess at this moment.
No, but when we are summarizing the history, and we can say that the child may be having problem, because here we are summarizing the history to achieve certain diagnosis. So here you are allowed to make use medical terms and not just the parents' terms, colloquial language, because in the HOPI and chief complaints you use the parents' language. But when you are summarizing, you are analyzing what is you have gathered from the history. So here you can use medical terms like spasticity. You can say that there is a predominant affection of the lower limbs and whatever with else, and you can say that probably there may be a spasticity in the lower limbs. That is what you can gather from the history, because this is your summary as a doctor. Yeah.
Shall I proceed to examination?
No,
Yes.
but as the questions are still remaining, as everybody has pointed out,
I
so
think
this is not a
we'll-
good summary. In the summary, you should be able to say that this is looking like upper motor neuron lesion, okay,
Yes.
with affection of the vision, feeding, okay. So this may be a child with cerebral palsy, with predominant affection of lower limb. So all this is already there in your history, and you just summarize it, and because you have to make some diagnosis and some differential diagnosis here
Yes.
at the end of the history, and then refine it further after the examination. So you are allowed to use medical terms and use those terms here. So I think this is a child with very early onset, non-progressive, okay, disorder affecting the central nervous system, most likely upper motor neuron lesion, okay, affecting bilateral, maybe you can just say upper motor neuron lesion, and with predominant affection of the motor development, manifest with associated maybe spasticity of the predominantly in the lower limbs, with severe feeding difficulties causing failure to thrive, and associated visual impairment, which is due to probably refractive error. But I would like to do the examination and also rule out squint and all those things. You can say that. Okay. Fine.
Examination. Go for
Here
examination.
itself, you
We
can
have
mention if
around
there is any
20-30
malnutrition
minutes.
or any seizures and all. Fine. Let us go ahead to the examination. But the summary has to be really with diagnosis and differential diagnosis. Go ahead.
In general examination, the child was sitting in the mother's lap. The child was restless, inattentive. However, the child played with rattle toys when offered to the child. Pulse rate was around 90 per minute. Pulse volume was good. Felt in all four limbs. Respiration was abdominal thoracic. Respiratory rate was 24 per minute. There was no pallor, icterus, cyanosis, clubbing, or edema. Weight was coming confirmatory weight was 10 kgs. Was at 50th centile. Length was 81 centimeters, which is at 25th centile as per WHO growth chart. Mid circumference is 45 centimeters, which is at third centile. WHO growth chart.
Actually, CP is Dr. Ote, Madhu.
Yeah.
Ote was there.
Yeah, I'm there.
Yeah, no, what I wanted to say was, because if they are taking CP for the first time, history taking itself takes 1 hour to be, finished. It's very difficult to complete all the examination and everything in one sitting.
So
Whatever you want to say, like we can just rush through it without, then they will not really gain that much, because examination would be even more detailed discussion.
Whatever is possible, we'll
Yes.
So we'll have to now rush through the examination, but remember that usually in a CP case, when we are doing it for the first time, history itself takes one full session, and maybe the examination can be a separate session.
We'll have to keep 2 consecutive days then, in that case, because otherwise, our frequency is every 14 days. The next session cannot be after 14 days. The link will be lost.
I think let us continue now and highlight the main points.
Regarding the head-to-toe examination,
Be taken, how they have to be taken, and so on. Am I audible?
Yes, ma'am.
So we can just rush to the examination, no issues.
ma'am, shall I proceed?
Please.
Please proceed.
Regarding the head-to-toe examination, anterior fontanelle was closed. Flat occiput was noted. There was no overriding or raising of the sutures. There was depressed nasal bridge. However, there was no other obvious facial dysmorphism. Ears appeared normal. There was no neurocutaneous markers. And ear, nose, chest, abdomen, and genitals were normal.
So again, in a child with CP,
Continue,
please
continue.
mention any callosities, okay? Any signs of vitamin deficiencies. So general examination is important here. Any other deformities, all this should come in the general examination. Yeah, go ahead.
Yes. So deformities, signs of vision difficulties, any contractures,
Yeah,
skin,
callosities,
yeah, all that.
neurocutaneous markers, all this
And
will
due
come
to-
here. He has already mentioned that. Fine.
Due to his vision problem, is he injuring himself or something of that sort?
Yeah, so any scars of injuries. Okay. Yeah.
Regarding the neurological examination, higher functions, the child was responding to visual cues, look towards mother when she speaks, plays with rattle toys, however is restless, doesn't always follow commands, and frequently throws stacking toys in awkward way. Regarding the cranial nerve examination, one could not be tested. Cranial nerve 2 direct and consensual light reflex was present. There was bilateral esotropia. Fundus examination was not done. Regarding cranial nerves 3, 4, 6, the child was able to follow objects when brought in the center of the line of vision. However, was not able to follow objects when brought sideways or when moved upwards or downwards in the sideline. Regarding cranial nerve 7, bilateral nasolabial fold was present. There was no deviation of angle of mouth and no drooling of saliva. The child could turn head and localize to sound. There was no pulling of secretions. Cranial nerve 11 could not be tested, and the tongue was in midline, no fibrillations were noted.
Your neck movement is telling you about the cranial nerve 11, no? Why it could not be tested? If he's turning his head and all, you are testing
Yes.
the 11th nerve, no issues. But what is your impression on the basis of your second and third and fourth, sixth nerves? What is the cause of the visual impairment here?
Maybe could be a 6th nerve palsy, which could have led to a convergent squint.
But you said the eye movements are okay, no?
Eye movements.
Eye movements are there in all the directions, right?
Eye movements are
So
there
is
in all
there
the
any
directions.
cranial nerve palsy, that is third, fourth, sixth nerve? Is there any gaze palsy? Is there a visual field defect? Is there a refractory error? Is there a esotropia or exotropia?
There is esotropia. There is visual field defect.
Okay. And
Bilateral.
Sorry?
Ma'am, there is bilateral esotropia. There is visual field defect.
Yeah, but it will not cause, defective vision on the sideways and all those, no? What is the cause for that? So there is also an additional visual field defect probably.
Yes.
Okay. And what else can be the cause? You can also have cortical visual impairment. So in the different areas of cortex, they have not matured enough to process what is seen, isn't it?
Yes.
So they are not responding to that visual stimulus. That is also possible.
Yes.
But that will not happen in a specific field. Okay? So it will be a general thing. And when you have a field defect, you will have in particular area, whether temporal or nasal or superior or inferior, like that. So in a very young child, it's very difficult to check the field of vision.
I brought the toy to the center and moved the toy again.
Then only he could see. So it may be a refractive error also.
Mentioned about fundus examination. What to expect the fundus examination?
The fundus examination, there could be optic atrophy or in terms of regression, developmental regression, there could be signs of optic atrophy or cherry red spot, but we have to rule out that.
So Dr. Geeta has asked how your third, fourth, sixth nerves can be normal when the child has got esotropia. So what is your answer? So your individual nerve function may be normal, isn't it? But
yes,
in the tropia, you are having problem with concomitant movements of the eyes. Okay. So you can have the concomitant movement, which is because the images are not forming at one place. That is causing your either esotropia or exotropia. So your one eye is slightly deviating, okay, so that both the images fall on one place, okay, and if this remains for long and the brain tries to suppress the other eye, then you can even land up with decreased vision in that eye, what is known as amblyopia. So it is possible even with normal third, fourth, sixth nerve movements. All the eye movements may be complete. Still, you can have a exotropia. And she has also asked up to what distance. So could you gather something about whether the near distant vision was normal or not? So that is also an important point. Okay, they can have very high
Basically,
refractory errors, which can also affect the vision. Sorry?
Your eye examination should have been in much detail because it was one of your chief complaints.
Agree.
Should not be just passing by.
So if it's an older cooperative
Continue.
child, then the examiner will definitely, expect you to do a detailed eye examination. In a 1.5 year child, it may be okay, because it's very difficult to assess the field of vision and all that. But at least grossly, you should be able to know what is the cause of the. So here you could gather that probably there is a refractive error as well as there is exotropia. We don't know whether there is a cortical, visual impairment, or there is also a field defect. That much we can gather. So you can maybe express that much. Okay, go ahead. Any other comments from other faculty?
That's okay because we should
Sure.
go further.
Fine, go ahead. Motor.
Regarding the motor examination, posture the child was lying in sitting posture in the mother's lap. The upper limb flexed at elbow, thumbs were in fisting position. The lower limbs were partially extended with hip adducted, internally rotated on leg. The knees were flexed and ankles were plantar. And the other limb was partially extended, and that knee, ankle was also plantar. The bulk limb girth appeared to be equal on both sides. Muscles appear firm on palpation. There was stiffness in both the lower limbs compared to the upper limbs. And on supine position, there was scissoring
So
of
here
legs.
you cannot use stiffness word. No? Here you are examining. So here you have to tell me whether there is increased tone, decreased tone.
Yes, ma'am.
The increased tone is of spasticity
Yes, ma'am.
type, or is there any other? Yeah. So
Mm.
don't use stiffness here.
I've later mentioned.
Correct.
Go ahead.
On supine posture, the scissoring of legs was noted. When the child was brought to full to sit position, there was no head tag. And when the child was held with arms under the axilla, the child didn't slip to the fingers. Tone was increased in both the lower limbs, and it was of grade 1+ as per modified Ashworth scale.
Why
Power
you
was-
mentioned active tone here? Ashworth is not active tone. You're doing
It is
passive range of
Passive
motion.
tune,
Ah,
yeah.
It is passive only.
Passive.
Yeah.
Passive tone.
Yeah. Okay.
Power was more than 3/5 in upper limb at elbow and wrist joint bilateral. At shoulder joint, I couldn't test the power, and it was more than 4/5 in the lower limbs at the knee and ankle joint. In both
So
the
was
limbs.
the, if you show a rattle, was he able to hold his shoulder like this? Hold his, elevate the shoulder, abduct the shoulder. You can check, no, in a 1.5-year-old kid.
Yeah.
You did not, you can at least say that the power was more than grade 3 if he's moving the joint against gravity. Okay.
He was able to move the shoulder joint
So
while
you can
holding
mention
it.
that it was more than grade 3. Go ahead.
The child could walk assisted with mother's hands, and the functional classification would be around grade 3 of GMFCS classification. Deep tendon reflexes, knee and ankle jerk was brisk in both the lower limbs.
Can you
Excuse me, why
tell us
don't
the classification once? What is grade 3?
And grade 3 is the child can sit without support, can do movements in the floor around him, while when requiring standing and walking posture, he requires support or orthosis for maintaining the walking posture.
So is he wearing any orthosis?
The mother said that the child was prescribed orthosis few days ago.
Yeah, but
And
grade
he-
3 is like a little dependent, isn't it? For long, I mean, for some maybe 2 or 3 steps he can walk independently, but for longer this thing he will require support. He will require, he will be dependent. Okay.
My mother said that the child was requiring braces to
Okay.
walk. However, he didn't bring it to the OPD, but she mentioned that history.
Okay, fine. So in this thing, see, grade 4 is self-limiting mobility with limitations. That is what is your GM FCS. Grade 3 is walks with handheld mobility device. So is he requiring any device to walk? AFO is required, isn't it?
Yeah. Mother was saying that the child required braces, and
Okay.
mostly it was worn at night. While when she
So
came
with
to
that,
the
is he walking freely, or he is still having limitation?
with the braces, the child, it is better than
Okay, fine. Then grade 3 is fine. Okay. Go ahead.
knee and ankle jerk were brisk in both the lower limbs. However, no clonus was present, and I couldn't test the biceps and triceps jerk. The superficial reflexes I couldn't check. While the child was walking, he used to walk on toes, and there were no abnormal movements present, and I couldn't do the sensory.
When he was walking on toes, was he using both legs equally? Was he dragging one leg? Was there associated movement, means extra movements on other upper limb when he's trying to walk? All these things should be described, because one of your chief complaints is not able to walk properly. So a bit more discussion.
And even what is he doing with his hands, no? So all the actually when you are doing this neurological examination, either you mix it with the developmental examination, because you have to confirm. The mother may be telling you that he's walking, he's standing, but you have to confirm it, no? By doing a developmental
Actually,
examination.
the child was not very cooperative, so we couldn't do a very detailed examination.
No, you don't have to do examination. It has to be by observation only. That is what is very important. In any child with CP, it has to be by observation only. Whatever he is doing, the child will actually be just left with the mother, and you have to observe from a distance only. And you tell the mother that make him do this, make him do that. Okay, that is how you need to arrive at certain conclusions. What is he doing with his upper limbs? What is he doing with his lower limbs? How is the posture? How is the how is he maintaining his posture in standing state? How is he walking? All that inference has to be drawn on observation only. So a developmental examination, either it can be separate or a part of your neurological examination. So at the end of your examination, this is completed, or is there anything else left?
No, ma'am, it's complete.
So you have not talked anything about the primitive reflexes or postural reactions. Spoken about all these things, whether there is any asymmetry, and whether it is more affection of lower limbs versus upper limbs, regarding the spasticity.
The lower limbs were more affected.
More affected. So what will be your inference from this examination?
Ma'am, there was increased tone, there was spasticity, and lower limbs were more affected compared to the upper limbs. The higher functions of the child were relatively better compared to the motor milestones. So most likely this could be a case of spastic diplegia involving the lower limbs more than upper limbs, with relatively preserved neurological functions. And there was
a little bit more information was required if you are ultimately diagnosing him as a cerebral diplegic CP. Then you have to talk about like whether the adduction, okay, about the hip power and all, which you have not really gone into much detail. Okay, which muscles were more spastic than the others? What was the range of movement? You have mentioned about the Ashworth modified Ashworth scale. So you have to mention about the groups of muscles rather than just telling about that lower limbs in general. Okay, so you can say that there is increased tone in hip flexors, knee extensors, your plantar flexors, and so on. Okay, because then it becomes more comprehensive and gives a good impression rather than just saying all lower limb muscles are having increased tone. Okay.
And the plantar flexors were more compared to the adductors.
So that's what I'm saying. And then are there any contractures?
There was no contracture.
Okay, so the range of movement was complete in all the joints, hip, knee, and ankle, or was there any limitation Were you able to, abduct the hips properly, or was there a, significant increase in the adductor tone? All these things you have to, because then the examiner knows that you are taking him towards a diplegic CP. Okay.
And he is walking on toes, so there has to be some limitation of ankle movement also.
Yes, sir.
Must be some limitation of
TA
ankle movement.
tightness.
Was there any TA tightness? It may be dynamic, it may be fixed. Yeah. So all those things have to be seen. And did you get any clue to the etiology in your examination? So this summary is
Sir, your voice is not clear.
Go ahead.
There was
Sayantan, please go ahead.
and there was no definite clue from the examination as according to the etiology. However, what I could gather was the ankle movements were stiff and the limbs were adducted. So maybe the tone was increased in the lower limb. So according to me, the lower limb affection was more compared to the upper limb.
Yeah. So etiology, I mean to say, was there any abdominal odor? Was there any hepatosplenomegaly? Was there anything? So which will point to a etiology. That's what I want to say regarding the examination findings. So these negative examination findings have to be mentioned.
So I think the other system examination also should be in detail. He's just mentioned other systems.
Yeah. That's what I said. That even hepatosplenomegaly and everything. So what you should do now, because it seems very complicated when you are doing it for the first time. So you should make a proper pro forma with you. Okay, mention all the points that are to be. You know that you will get a case of a hemiplegic CP or a diplegic CP or a quadriplegic CP. Okay, and in such a case, what history I'm supposed to take? So a lot of overlap will be there between the three cases. So you have already written your points of history. So keep on, practicing those points with whatever we have told you. Similarly, in the examination, you will have particular points to be included. Maybe I can make this thing and send it across. You can use that, and so that you don't miss any points. And then in each child, you can decide what is the relevance of this point, and some points may not be relevant for every case. So that you don't forget anything and becomes a habit. Once you practice, then you will not miss out on any points. Okay.
So, ma'am, like you pointed out for history, the examination should also be focused on finding out the localization of lesions and complications and other abnormalities.
Exactly. So
to
the
summarize,
localization, the comorbidities, everything, whatever is there in the history will remain in the examination also. Only thing is in the examination, what additional information you will get is only whether there is spasticity or increased tone is already evident from the history, whether it is spasticity or dystonia, and how are the reflexes. This is the only additional thing that you are getting in the examination. That's all you can get in the history itself. Okay. And of course, your cranial nerves and everything, which you are doing in very great detail in the examination. Otherwise, it's almost you're just extension of the history. You're just confirming whatever you have found in the history. That's why history has to take time in a child with CP. And you just confirm those findings in the examination. Okay. Because nobody is going to ask you what is the Tardieu scale, what is the thing. If you miss that, there is asymmetry of tone on both the sides. If you miss that, there is a contracture. So don't go for the scales and everything unless you have.
Not audible.
Your voice is.
Yeah. Kavita, your voice is not audible.
Sayantan?
No. Net has some problem. Kavita, your voice is not audible.
Okay.
In between, it goes for a minute, disappears.
Okay, am I audible now?
Now you are audible, but half a minute.
I don't know what I was talking and what has been missed. Yeah, so I was just talking about that in the history, most of the points are already cleared. And in the examination, what extra you have to see is what is the distribution of the spasticity. Okay, what is the type of, whether it is spasticity or dystonia, neonatal, your primitive reflexes, postural reactions, all these would be the additional things that need to be covered in the examination of a CP child. And of course, at the end, in the summary, you have to again localize. So localize the, where is the lesion, what is the comorbidity, everything remains the same, except for these 4 or 5 things which are additional in the examination. So in the history should be so comprehensive that examination is just an extension of the history. And most of the examination, please remember that it is by observation. If you touch the child, he will go into dystonia or something, and then your whole examination will be lost. So most of the examination of the developmental milestones, what he has achieved, as well as lot of the things which can be just gathered from exam observation should be taken in the examination. Mostly you will just need maybe what is the range of movement and what are the reflexes like. Very few findings you will need from the actually touching the child. So that is what I want to reiterate here. And then of course you will have the further questions.
Yeah, you didn't tell us about spine and is there any problem with spine or
something?
Yes. Because this child may be having spina bifida and he may be having tethered cord. Okay.
Anthropometer had mentioned the spine was common.
Did you mention the spine?
No, I don't think so.
So in the general examination, always don't forget the head and the spine. Okay, skull and the spine. Yeah.
Spine.
And in the general examination, skin is very important. Look for all vitamin deficiencies, nutritional deficiencies, callosities, all the complications because of being in a particular position. Sometimes we find that the hand is so tightly fisted. They have a lot of these
blisters.
Blisters and callosities because of the repeated friction. So all those things. Is there any discrepancy? I have not mentioned the length of both the lower limbs. Are they symmetrical? Bulk is symmetrical. Upper limbs. Okay, all that things should be mentioned. Okay. So I think I'll just share on the group. Maybe Madam can then share it on the IIP PG to all PG.
That would be nice.
Some few distinct points which should not be missed in the history. Few points which should not be missed in the examination, which you can just mention, and a few scales and few questions which can be asked in the examination. Okay.
Perfect.
Because ideally I would have liked it to be a 2-session class. So it's a big topic to be covered in one.
Let him attempt to give a diagnosis.
Yeah, please.
Attempt to give a diagnosis. At least we'll know where the problem is.
Fine.
This is a 1 year, 8 months old child with global developmental delay, with motor milestones being not affected, with history of feeding difficulties.
You're not summarizing. You give a diagnosis now.
Okay.
Summary is already done. Yeah, diagnosis and differentials.
A likely diagnosis would be spastic diplegia.
First, the CNS diagnosis is always physiological diagnosis, anatomical diagnosis, etiological diagnosis, and pathological diagnosis.
Should be the first thing.
And then giving complication and summarizing it. See, all these things should come here.
Yeah.
So anatomy, this is
first physiological
to the upper.
See, it's a physiological diagnosis. He has got a quadriparesis in which lower limb is more affected than upper limb. So all 4 limbs are affected. That's a first your physiological diagnosis with his eyes and ear, whatever you want to say, being affected. Okay, that's your physiological. Then coming to anatomical. So this is how you have to proceed for a diagnosis.
As there are signs of spasticity, I'd like to say the upper motor neuron was involved, and because there is a suspicion of perinatal insult, so maybe.
In upper motor neuron also we talked about that you have ruled out certain upper motor neuron is involving whole of the upper motor neuron. Are you wanting to say that, or a specific part? We said now we have ruled out basal ganglia, we have ruled out cerebellum, we have ruled out. So what is left?
Cortex and subcortical.
So
is it
yes,
cortical? Is it subcortical?
Yeah. So you are
Is
left.
it cortical or is it sub? That you like?
Sir, as there are vision abnormalities, this could point towards the cortical involvement, but higher intellectual functions are preserved. They are relatively well compared to the other milestones. So
But they are not
most like
totally spared also, no? They are not totally spared. And he had a seizure also. So that is telling you that there is also cortical affection. So this is both cortical as well as subcortical.
yes,
So your localization would be bilateral, cortical and
cortical.
subcortical. Okay.
Because global developmental delay usually will have cortical affection with it.
Yeah. But with you are having a lot of white matter signs also, the terms of spasticity and all. So you can say it is probably both bilateral, cortical as well as subcortical lesion. Yeah. But you're not expecting any basal ganglia affection, cerebellar affection, brainstem affection. Okay. Yeah. Though there is squint and all, which we are probably explaining it right. It is all explainable on the cortical and subcortical itself. Okay.
And feeding difficulty will also be explained by?
Yeah.
Feeding difficulties can be explained by upper motor neuron lesion.
Upper motor.
Yes. Okay. So that will be your this thing. Then your etiology.
And etiology, it could be an intranatal, it could be a perinatal insult, or it could be during the time of gestation.
So once you get a history of asphyxia, then of course that will be your first diagnosis. But still some mimics can be there. Okay. What can be the DDs, differentials still? Despite having a definite history of not cried at birth, because there was no encephalopathy after that. So what can be the other differentials still?
Regarding perinatal asphyxia or did not cried after birth?
So perinatal asphyxia is one, prematurity with probably associated bleeds, intraventricular bleeds may be the second, hemorrhages. What else could be the differentials?
There could be cortical abnormalities in the brain.
Which abnormalities? What do you mean by that? So malformations.
Malformation.
Okay. So brain malformations, your lissencephaly, pachygyria, all can come like this, which just delayed or thing. Okay. But will they have these upper motor neuron signs like spasticity?
No, ma'am.
So what will be the clues for brain malformations versus a child who has got brain damage because of
the brain malformation? The higher functions would be more affected. There could be seizures.
Very good. Okay, so you will have almost equal affection of the higher, the higher functions as well as the motor system. But when you have frank spasticity with clonus or other features which support that there may be a cortical or a subcortical affection of the tracts, this is more likely to be due to a damage, because they had already developed and then their control is gone. Okay, while in brain malformations or etc., the control had never come. There was never any control of the lower centers. Okay, so you do not usually get frank signs, but if there is any damage because of hypoxia, hypoglycemia, you are more likely to get. So the same, suppose there is a schismcephaly, then also the child can have a weakness on the opposite side. Okay, but if you have frank upper motor neuron signs like spasticity, you are having a very dystonic kind of a hand, you are having a spasticity in the lower limb also on that side, that is more likely to be due to a injury to a already formed corticospinal tract. That's what I want to say. Okay, so that's how you can differentiate between the injured versus the malformed cortex. Okay, and what else can injure apart from asphyxia, hypoglycemia?
Could be due to intrauterine infections.
Infections, very good, right? So TORCH group of infections, how many percentage will you get a history of fever and rash? Sorry? So you may miss that history, isn't it? Sometimes the mother may have just a very mild fever with arthralgia and all. She may not even, record it. So when you ask the history, she may not remember that she had, in the first trimester, any kind of that infection. So torch infection remains a very important DD, and it can mimic a cerebral diplegia. It can mimic a hemiplegic CP, depending on what area is damaged. It can cause asymmetric damage. So whenever there is a damage to the already formed tracts, already formed brain structures, you have more of these signs. Okay. So brain malformations and torch group of infections.
So,
apart from that,
are we going to
certain
stop
CP
now?
mimics. Yeah, I think we can.
Thank you.
Finish with that some progressive disorders can also look like
Yes,
CP, and you need to at least know a few of them. If
metachromatic leukodystrophy.
Yes. So mostly they will have a history of first attaining the milestones and then regressing.
Yes.
Okay, that will be the most important differentiating feature. So you have to at least have 3 or 4 arginine deficiency or
Rabies.
and yeah. So any leukodystrophy and not any actually, more of MLD. MLDs will come with more of the lower limb affection first, then arginine deficiency, and very important is hereditary spastic paraparesis, HSP. Okay, and of course Jogren, Larsen, all those. There are lots of other metabolic disorders which can come with spastic diplegia like picture. So that should be last in your list when you talk about the DDs. Okay, so I think we'll call it a day, Madhu ma'am.
I think so. Thank you so much. Thanks, everybody. Anyone wants to have a word about this? Dr. Shailesh Patil?
Yeah, I even agree with, as Kavita madam said, very difficult to cover a case of cerebral palsy in one session. And I hope whether it is possible to divide in 2 sessions. That is what I feel, even I feel.
If the history was completely presented, then we can go into the examination, but history itself has to be covered in a lot of details, so it has taken a little time today. So Sayantan, you have done a good job. It's a little complicated. Even when I was a resident, I would not have presented like this, how well you have presented. So that's perfectly okay, but I think now with so much of explosion of knowledge and all, everything at your fingertips, you people are much more also empowered to have more things covered in the history and examination as compared to us who are totally dependent on.
You want to have a word, Shabila?
No, he has covered quite good. As I feel he should also, about the treatment we couldn't get a chance to talk, but for CP, early intervention and rehabilitation will be the good for spastic die. So as early as 1 year, 8 months you mentioned, isn't it? So the early they start physiotherapy and the parents get trained, the more good outcome will be.
So Dr. Mishra, would you like to say something?
He has presented well. The only thing is he has to elaborate and make it a flow-like presentation. It should flow from one end to the other end so that nobody should get a lot of chance to ask questions, That's the main your aim, so that you pass in your exam.
Anand, some word of pearls of wisdom from you, Anand?
Problem with him was the patient, he had a less contact with the patient. He was an OPD patient, and so he couldn't come. He was not much, parents also were not very cooperative. So that added to the basic disability of presentation. This almost all students, they start presenting routinely when they come to the exam going term. So, and generally in the hospitals, the ward rounds presentations are not so longish. They should be longish, but they are not longish in most of the hospitals, other than medical college maybe. So if that what Dr. Mishra was talking about, that the fluency of presentation comes by the daily presentation. Nowadays, daily presentation are like a TPR BP presentation. So, and the consultant only takes the decision. So that is a problem in the system. And that fluency what we had, or more than us, our seniors had a very good command over the presentation. Our seniors were more prepared then. So that is like because of the system, it is going down. Daily presentation is the only way to have master fluency.
Practice makes the man perfect, you know.
But that practice is in private hospital. That practice is generally not there. They don't get, everybody's in hurry, and the teaching sort of rounds are less common.
So I think with IIP PG case presentation, yeah. So with IIP PG case presentations, that is the gap we are trying to fill.
Yes,
I think
yes.
what sir pointed out, and hopefully when COVID is over, we can meet physically also, so that the examination
or a
part is
hybrid.
also-
Hybrid. Those hybrid
Yeah,
would be
hybrid
always better. Those who want to come physically, they can come.
Yeah.
I think hybrid will be able to stay there.
Yeah.
The
So
basic,
absolutely.
Kavita, the basic problem is the basic undergraduate neurology is not very well done. So you just didn't ask any root values about any reflexes. If you, there will be problems there only. Leave apart the correlation and everything. Yeah.
Sir, for DNB exam, actually in the exam, there is a limited time allotted to each case. So around 20 to 25 minutes, the student has to finish history examination and the questions the examiner will ask. So actually CP is quite a elaborate case. Probably as you have pointed out, practice will make things perfect. And I would request Kavita madam to share the PPT so that in a case the student will know what relevant things to be highlighted and what to be omitted, because it will be more important from the exam point of view in the DNB, as the time crunch is a issue there.
Okay.
Agreed. Thank you all faculty for joining today and imparting the knowledge, and really enjoyed the session, and many things to learn really.
Kavita has left probably. I think she had to travel back, no?
Yeah. So we have the next session after 2 weeks, and we'll let
ask Kavita to post on the group.
Yeah, I will ask her. I will contact her. Yeah,
the material she was going to.
I'll do that. Yes. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.